Hey everyone, this is Randall from the Imperial Minis channel. This is a video that I've thought about doing for quite a while. I'm a huge Blackstone Fortress fan and have been patiently collecting as much of the released content for the game as I have been able to over the past year or so. I missed the boat when this game originally came out, and I only bought into it in May of 2021. By the time I bought the game, all the content for the game had already been produced, and most of it was already off store shelves. I know there were a lot of other folks out there who, like me, got into the game too late to pay reasonable prices for most of the expansion content. For new players to BSF, it can be a dizzying and daunting process to try to figure out how to get a hold of expansion content and to figure out what they can realistically expect to pay for it once they've found it. Let's first quickly take a high-level look at the box content of the game and what the order of precedence for these releases is. First, the base game was released in November of 2018, and the final release came out in August of 2020. So that's a spread of about a little over a year and a half or so. I've broken the main releases into 3 tiers, but really the first 2 are the most important to pay attention to. Each tier is headed by its controlling expansion, or in the case of the first tier, the base game. For purposes of this initial discussion, we'll leave aside the card pack expansions and other miscellaneous items, but we'll talk about those later. The first 2 releases, the dreaded Ambull and Trader Command, require only the base game to play. If you're not planning to go all in on BSF, you might want to limit yourself to just the tier 1 pool. There's a lot of content to be had here, with Ambull especially being my favorite of the small expansions that I own. The next tier, the Escalation tier, is where the biggest challenge and cost comes with BSF collecting. The Escalation story expansion is required material for playing any subsequent content, so it is effectively the gatekeeper to the rest of the BSF content. The contents of the Escalation box, including the map tiles, are required for future expansions. If you plan to go the distance in collecting BSF, focus on finding, putting together, or working around via proxying or DIYing the Escalation expansion contents. Without it, you'll be stuck in the first tier. The second tier features no respite, or no respite as those across the Atlantic say, and Deadly Alliance. The final tier contains the last box content of BSF, Ascension, that wraps up the BSF story. No other BSF content came after Ascension. Next, we'll move into the main content of this video, the updated pricing for these expansions. Note, the prices I'm giving are based on my daily observations of US and international eBay auctions related to BSF. All prices I give are in US dollars, and the prices are current as of the time of this video, which is August of 2022. You can also find people selling the game and its expansions on Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist, and other places. Prices on those platforms vary wildly based on the person listing the item, and you have the potential of finding a spectacular deal or of getting screwed. I fell victim to a Facebook Marketplace scammer selling used BSF expansions a while back, so it can happen to you too. Do your due diligence before agreeing to a sale on any platform that doesn't offer rock-solid buyer protection. So let's get to it. So obviously the most fundamental thing you're going to need for this game is the core box. It was originally released in November of 2018, and it originally had an MSRP of $150 in the US. That MSRP is now $170, but online I've seen it go for as low as $125, and the high that I've seen online is $150. So the MSRP is $170. That's what you're going to pay if you buy it from GW directly. I believe they're still selling it actually. But if you buy it from eBay, or if you get it from a local store that will give you a little bit of a discount, generally the high is going to be $150. But you can find it for lower than that if you look online or get lucky on eBay. So the dreaded Ambull was released in February of 2019. And it, along with all of the similar smaller boxed expansions, had an MSRP of $60. And now is where you're going to start seeing the prices go up online. So the lowest I've seen it for online recently is around $115, and the high is around $150. So if you get it for anything in between those two, you're doing well. I find the Ambull expansion actually to be one of the more fun of the smaller expansions. Also, in White Dwarf, GW released a whole multi-mission quest that involves the Ambull. So not only, if you get the Ambull expansion, not only will you have the content of the expansion itself, but you can get a pretty nice expansion campaign from White Dwarf. So the Ambull expansion is pretty good value for its money. Trader Command was released in July of 2019, and it, like Dreaded Ambull, only requires the base game. But this is going to be the last expansion that only requires the base game. Trader Command comes with 2 miniatures, comes with a Chaos Ogrin miniature and a Trader Commissar miniature, along with a pretty simple quest. But the value here in this expansion is mostly in those 2 minis. The MSRP was $60, but the lowest I've seen this one is around $180, with the high about $225. Now things are changing a little bit for this one right now because the Kill Team Morok box includes this Trader Commissar and Chaos Ogrin unit in it. So for folks buying this box primarily for the miniatures, they can now get those miniatures cheaper from the Morok box or from people that are splitting up the Morok box. I personally have Trader Command. I have all the cardboard and paper components of Trader Command. I just don't have the miniatures. So I've kind of put this one together over some time, and hopefully in the near future plan to buy just those miniatures kind of a la carte on eBay, or wait for them to come out separately in retail and get them. But in any case, I'm hoping that I won't have to pay any more than the original Trader Command MSRP to totally have mine put together. Now, Escalation is really like the keystone. It's the big boy. This is the one that's the gatekeeper for all the expansions. This one was released sometime in the fall of 2019, either September or October. And it adds 4 new explorers and 1 retinue character, along with 8 new enemy miniatures. The lowest I have seen this, well, the MSRP of it was 110. That's also the MSRP of Ascension. So both of the kind of big box story expansions are 110 MSRP. The lowest I've seen it for online is 250, with the highest being around 350. And this is one that you could potentially piece together. So I pieced mine together, getting the enemy miniature separately, getting the hero sprue separately, and then getting all the paper cardboard components separately. That is something that those looking to get this expansion and others that are harder to find might want to keep their eye on, because you might find people selling just the box and the box contents without the miniatures online. So if you want to take the risk of going down that route and scooping up maybe a box set of Escalation for, let's say $150, you see someone selling it for $150 just for the paper components, the paper and cardboard components, you might be able to piece it together for a decent deal. I put it together. I got the box and all the cardboard for about $100, and then as you'll see later, you can get the cultists for about $25, which is what I did, and then I was able to get just the hero sprue separately for about $50. So I got it for less than that low online price, but still above MSRP. That was all probably maybe almost a year ago that I put that together, so prices have gone up since then, especially for the heroes. But this is really the most important expansion of all of them. If you plan to go to the end, like if you plan to get everything, you need to focus on Escalation. So the first post-Escalation expansion box is No Respite. This one came out in February of 2020, and this one has kind of a reputation of being the most expensive to buy online. So its MSRP was $60, just like the others. Its low online price, though, is I've seen it around 275, with the high being 400 or thereabouts, around 400. I've even seen it go higher than 400. So people kind of go bonkers for this one. I think it may have had the shortest production run or the smallest production run. You'll notice its release date of February 2020 is right before the pandemic hit and right before factories shut down and businesses went in lockdown. So it's entirely possible that GW didn't produce as many of these as they originally planned to. The miniatures in this box are actually the most common and easy to find of any of the other expansions. So it has these 3 Death Guards that I believe, I'm not a 40k guy, but from what I've seen, these are like fairly just common Death Guard miniatures. And then it comes with 6 Poxwalkers, which are also readily available anywhere. But for whatever reason, this is the most expensive expansion to get your hands on. From what I've seen, it sounds like fun. I do not own this one, so this is like my white whale right now because I'm not gonna spend $300, $400 to get this one, and I haven't been able to locate a boxed cardboard paper version of this game anywhere. I haven't seen a no miniatures version anywhere for a reasonable price. So this is one of those ones that I keep my eye out for. But yeah, this one's very popular. Just based on the pricing, it's extremely expensive. So this one, I wouldn't get too wrapped up about finding this one immediately. I would focus. I mean, you got to focus on Escalation, but I would maybe think about getting some of the earlier expansions like the Ambull, or getting the Ascension final expansion before getting bogged down in this one. The next expansion is Deadly Alliance. So this one, it also had an MSRP of $60. This one came out in June 2020, and it features a quest and a retinue character, which is this Zote called the Archivist. So, you complete a quest and this guy will join you and, kind of be like a massive tank and damage dealer in your party. This one doesn't go for nearly as much as No Respite. So, No Respite came out in February 2020. This one came out in June of 2020. So not all that far apart, but this one, the lowest I've seen this one online is like $75. The most I've seen it online go for is around $125. So this one is pretty cheap to get online, but I think that's primarily because it doesn't offer quite as much content as some of the other ones. So the No Respite expansion, I think, has a lot more going on in it than this one does. This one is primarily just a quest to find this Archivist or earn his allegiance, and then he joins your party. So there's a little less going on with it, but it still has a pretty sweet miniature in it. But yeah, it's relatively affordable. And then the final box expansion of Blackstone Fortress is Ascension. So this one came out in August of 2020 and had an MSRP of $110, just like Escalation did. The lowest I've seen it online for is still MSRP, so we're 2 years on now and you can still find this one for right around MSRP. The highest I've seen it for is still only $150. So really, for anyone that is maybe early in their Blackstone Fortress collecting but does seriously intend to eventually find all of them, even if you don't have Escalation yet, I would scoop up Ascension. I think the pricing on this one is still relatively low because of that Escalation kind of gatekeeper that's there. So I think enough people know that they can't use this one without Escalation, that those folks who maybe have the base game and one expansion or something, they don't bother buying this one yet because they don't have Escalation. So I would say if you do plan to go the distance on Blackstone Fortress collecting, that you might want to just scoop this one up when you can find a decent deal on it, and just keep it in shrink wrap if you can resist the urge to open it. just in case you have to cash out later. It's better to sell this thing still in shrink. I haven't played it yet because I haven't got to the end of the campaign, but this one features 2 Guardian miniatures. They're almost completely identical minis, except for their little hands are different. The little set of hands they have. That's the only difference in the 2 minis. But it wraps the story up. It seems to have a lot of content in it. Like I said, I haven't played through it yet, but yeah. So that's the last actual boxed expansion for the game. So now we'll move on to some smaller items of Blackstone Fortress. So there have been 3 card packs released for Blackstone Fortress. They were released between August and October of 2019. So this is right around the same time that Escalation was coming out. There's 3 of them: Endless Peril, Advanced Arsenal, and Abominable Intellect. Endless Peril offers 30 new combat cards, so it'll give you, it splits it into 15 new combat encounters and 15 of the, I can't remember what they're called, the little scenarios or conflicts or whatever. Advanced Arsenal gives you new items for you to purchase in Precipice after a mission. And Abominable Intellect is all new encounter cards that basically just juice up the number of enemies that can spawn. So, but one different thing about Abominable Intellect is that all the encounter cards have they have a twist on the 4 position of all of them have a twist. So that is one interesting thing. I'm not a real big fan of just dumping more bodies into the game, but I think the twists are actually pretty cool. So one house rule I intend to eventually implement when I open the Abominable Intellect is to just every combat just pull one of the Abominable Intellect cards out to put a twist into every combat. As for these, I own Advanced Arsenal and Abominable Intellect. I do not have Endless Peril yet. That's one I've been kind of waiting for a good deal to scoop up. We'll go into the pricing here in just a second. I was able to get the other 2 for a relatively good deal. Moving into the pricing, these had the lowest MSRP of anything Blackstone Fortress related, as you might understand, because they're all just small card packs. They were all originally $15. The low prices I've seen for these, Endless Peril has the lowest I've seen it sell for is around $50. Advanced Arsenal, $75, and Abominable Intellect, $90. Abominable Intellect seems to be the most popular, or at least most expensive of these. And then on the high end, Endless Peril I see it generally go around $60 to $70. Advanced Arsenal I've seen it go over $100. And then Abominable Intellect I've also routinely see it go over $100. So I think as far as price appreciation on these have actually gone up more than any of the other expansions if you're just looking at the price. That said, they're nowhere near the $400 that you can expect to buy a new in-box copy of No Respite, but still they've gone up quite a bit. But I wouldn't bother getting these until you've got the expansions that you intend to get, unless you get like a killer deal on one of these, or find some kind of a bundle online that someone's throwing these in. But I would focus on the story expansions first, obviously, and then whatever other expansions you're interested in before you try to hunt these things down. The next piece of content we'll look at is the 2019 annual. So this came out in the winter of 2019. I think it was either December or January of 2020. It had an MSRP of around $25, I believe. And this thing is just kind of a compendium of all the White Dwarf content that had been released for the game from the game's launch up until the winter of 2019. So the White Dwarf content, it'll give you extra quests to go on. It gives you some retinue character rules. It gives you some solo character rules, so you can take a party of one basically and go through the Blackstone Fortress just, as one superpowered explorer. I think this is actually a pretty interesting item. The low price you can find it for online is still $25. I've seen it sell for that. High end, around $50. But this is actually a pretty reasonably priced way to extend your enjoyment of the game if you're not looking to go all the way to like getting Escalation and Ascension and some of those later expansions, because this will allow you to get some extra quest content with just the base game, and it'll give you rules for adding additional characters to the game that you can procure fairly cheaply. And if you're a 40k player, you may already have some of the minis that you would need to do that, or you can proxy something. So if you're not planning to invest heavily in this game, you might, well, if you're not planning to invest heavily and you don't have White Dwarf, then I would look at maybe scooping one of these up if you can find a good deal. Obviously, if you have White Dwarf, you probably already, if you've subscribed to it, you probably already have these articles. But if you're lazy and don't want to have to dig them all out of all your magazines, you can just buy this and have them all in one spot, which is pretty nice too. Okay, so Combat Arena. This one came out around the same time Escalation did, around August, September 2019. And this thing is not a piece of Blackstone Fortress content. It is just a board game that repackages the hero sprue from Escalation to kind of a different little fighting game. So you kind of have the heroes from Escalation fight each other. I put it on here because if you're someone who's trying to piece together Escalation, you might be able to find a copy of this Combat Arena game somewhere for a halfway reasonable price. Most people that are selling this game know that it has the Escalation hero sprue in it, so the price on this is not generally going to be cheap, but it gives you another something to look out for to possibly find a cheap price. This originally was a Barnes & Noble exclusive, so it was originally exclusively sold in a US bookstore chain, but now you can find them on eBay, maybe some other spots. You might find someone selling some of their old board games for cheap, and they don't know that they could get more for this on eBay if they just broke the sprue out of there. The MSRP for it was originally around 35 or 40 bucks. The lowest I've seen it online for is around 80, and on the high end I've seen it go for over 100, around 125. Okay, so the last two pieces of content here they're labeled expansion packs, but they're really just boxes of extra enemies. So this first one is Servants of the Abyss. It originally had an MSRP of 40, and it contains half of the enemies in Blackstone Fortress. So I think it's one big sprue or two sprues, but it just gives you half of the enemies that were in Blackstone Fortress. So the whole box has, let's say, 4 beastmen. This gives you 2. The whole box comes with 14 Trader Guard. This has 7. So the purpose of this is for folks that either didn't want to buy the whole box game but wanted the minis for something, or if you want to buy extra minis so that you can make your encounters more difficult. So, let's say you draw 3 Trader Guard combat cards or encounter cards, and you normally wouldn't have enough guard to put on the table. This will give you extra guys to put out there. So MSRP was 40 bucks. The lowest I've seen it online is 60 bucks right now. And that's not in the box form. That's just people splitting out the sprue, the enemy sprue. And the highest I've seen it for online is when folks want to buy the actual shrink-wrapped box is around 120 bucks. And the last piece of boxed content here is the Cultist of the Abyss box. As you probably guessed, this is the enemies. These are the enemies from the Escalation expansion. So this is an option for folks that are going to try to piece together Escalation. Its MSRP is 25, and If GW isn't still producing it, it still seems to be readily available in stores or some online places that you can buy it. So you can still find it for the MSRP. I see it pop up regularly. You can still find it online on eBay for 25 or 30 bucks. The highest I've seen it go for is 35 bucks. So it's still very cheap because I think it's either still being produced or it was only just recently discontinued, but there's still a lot of them out there. So for someone thinking that they might want to start piecing together Escalation, this might not be a bad thing to just pick up. And worst case scenario, if you end up finding Escalation with the enemies in them later, you'll just have extra enemies, or you can repurpose them for something else. But this is one you can still find for very close to MSRP. So that pretty much does it. I hope this was helpful. This, like I said, these prices are current as of August 2022. I am still obsessively paying attention to the prices and availability of Blackstone Fortress stuff online. As I said, I still need No Respite and Endless Peril and the minis from Trader Command. I think if you're new and if you're just getting into this game, if you're new to it, or if you have it and kind of want to rekindle your collecting of this game, I say just be patient. Unless you're some kind of high roller or baller with $2,000 in your pocket and you want to just go and pull the trigger on like all the buy it now prices for all this stuff, just be patient, look for deals, set eBay save eBay searches so you can kind of just jump on there and see what has recently been added. Sharing this information, I'm kind of putting myself at a disadvantage here because I'm one of those guys that refreshes the eBay search results a few times a day. But it's a fantastic game. I want lots of other people to enjoy it as I have. And yeah, I just wish you all best of luck finding this game. Let me know what you think in the comments, if what your journey has been in finding all the pieces of this game, what you're still looking for, and where you found stuff. I know a lot of folks who've collected this after it came out have kind of got their own stories of piecing this thing together or that thing together, or finding this killer deal on this or that. So I'd be interested to hear that if anybody has any killer deal where they found something for 10 or 15 bucks, or piece something together for less than the MSRP. That'd be pretty cool. But anyway, that's all for this video. I hope it was helpful. And for Imperial Minis, this is Randall signing off.